If someone tells you something at the start of the relationship, believe them. Don't hope that will change. And I think at 37, I was so concerned that I was running out of time to have a child. I overlooked it. Beyond my better judgment, I didn't listen to that. But he did tell me at the start of the relationship. And so that relationship ended when I was 40. I think I held on too long. Well, 39, sorry. I think I held on a bit too long through that desperation of I'm running out of time.
Hello and welcome back to the Turning 30 podcast, a place where we talk about what it's really like to be in your 30s. I'm your host, life coach Emma Wilson, and I'm here to help you feel better, get unstuck, and be more confident in your 30s. And it's September. How are we all feeling about it being the last few months of the year? You're going to be inundated now with all of those inspirational posts on Instagram, all of the coaches coming out and saying, okay, it's the last few months of the year, it's time to get up and go. And the truth is, I also feel that energy, but I feel it from a really constructive place of, I feel like January the 1st, you kind of like, it's been Christmas and New Year, and you all of a sudden catapulted into having to actually go and get your goals. But really now, September the 1st is the real New Year. This is what I think. And we should have a rebrand that September is the new January, because you've already had 8 months to get used to being in 2025. And now it's time to actually double down on what you're aiming to do and your goals. So I'm a huge fan of September. I'm a huge fan of that back to school energy. I really love it. I really feel like this is the time when you can just refocus and make these last few months really focus on the things that you want to achieve. So sorry that I sound like a life coach, but I'm afraid I am a life coach. And for all those who are joining, who are new to the podcast, welcome. It's really fun to have you here and listening in. And for those who are my turning original listeners, thank you for coming back. We have a really exciting few months of episodes ahead. I've got some incredible guests planned, and even more than that, I'm going to be really focusing on doing some good solo episodes to get you really back in that place where you know that this podcast is for where you can come and you can actually do that deep work on yourself to make your 30s the best decade yet. It's a place to come to feel validated, to feel supported, to just really know that if you are a woman and you're feeling left behind, you're feeling like other people are ahead of you, or that you're not exactly where you expected you would be by now, this is the place that you will come in order to be supported and know that you're not alone, and also to get the tools that you need in order to grow and to get out of this spot. Or if you've already in that place, you've already been doing this work, then it's to take that work even deeper. And I'm really excited to have you here. So please keep tuning in. Today's episode is a really special one for me because when I was single and I was 35, I often thought of my fertility options. And one of those options that presented itself to me that I knew I was going to explore more was the option to become a solo mother by choice, an SMBC, as this is the abbreviation. And I really felt that the option to do this, the option to become an SMBC, was something that really gave me a lot of hope, a lot of comfort, and a lot of acceptance about my single journey. So I knew it was important, and I know how important it is to invite women with incredible stories who do things differently, who aren't just living the status quo, who have timelines that are different from the timelines that we see all over our Instagram feeds all the time. And that is why I invited Emma onto the podcast. And the conversation that we have is really empowering. For those of you that are exploring this option or thinking about it as a potential for the future, I highly recommend listening to it and really seeing the nuance and the different ways that Emma has looked at it. Emma herself is a transformation coach. So she is originally a mindset coach, and you can really hear from her journey and the way that she speaks, just how empowered she is and just how she has chosen to look at life differently. And it is these stories of women like this that I want to showcase on this podcast week in and week out. So I'm really excited to talk all about Emma's journey to being an SMBC, the decision that she made after going through a breakup at the age of 39 to go down this route. She shares so much of her story, from the practical things. You know, she obviously went through IVF, but also questions that I had for her about what it's really like behind the scenes of being a solo parent. I didn't hold back with the questions, so I hope that you enjoy. And if you want to take this work deeper, not just this podcast episode about becoming a solo mum, but being in a space where you can be validated that, you know, you want to take your journey in your 30s to a more positive, empowered place, I invite you to come and join us in the Turning community. The Turning community, for those of you who aren't already in there or who haven't heard me talking about it before, is my monthly membership community where we come together and you get direct coaching from me. That is curriculum and courses there, but there's also a global community of other women in their 30s who are doing this work. Because you know what? We're not expected to have everything figured out by now, but something that we can do is to stop just waiting and expecting for things to change and to step up and to take control. Now, the doors to Turning are currently closed, but you can get on the wait list. So I've put that link in the episode description that you can go on and already get on that wait list. The doors will be open in a few weeks at the end of the month. So if you're listening, we're now at the start of September. I'm really excited to get back in front of the microphone after a summer break. I know so many of you have been messaging me like, Emma, when's the next podcast episode? So we're finally here. And my last request before I leave you today with Emma, two Emmas, I would love you to subscribe, follow the show on whichever platform you're listening on. And if you like this episode, send it to a friend who maybe needs to hear it, or share it on your Instagram or on your socials if you are active. And let me know how it lands, because I always love to hear feedback and I love to hear what you think. So without further ado, let's dive into this week's episode all about being a solo mother by choice. Hi, Emma, and welcome to the podcast.
Hi, it's lovely to see you.
I'm so happy to have you here, and I'm apologising in advance because I'm in a bit of a spicy mood. I have just released a workshop called Fuck the Timelines, and it's really just getting me all riled up about women settling and doing things just for the sake of, you know, being the same as everybody else and having the same path and all those things. So I just feel like it's very good timing that we're having a conversation, because I feel like you are a perfect example of somebody who didn't follow the normal timelines. And I'm just really happy that we get to have this conversation and to dive into this topic of being a single mum by choice, or an SMBC.
Yeah, as they like to call it.
Yes. Do you like the label SMBC?
Yeah, I actually don't mind it. How else can you, I mean, some people say change it to solo parent by choice, but yeah, I don't mind it. I think it best describes the position that I'm in and the choice that I made. So yeah,
you know what I love about it? I love that it's like, you know, you have like numbers, like letters after your name, like if you've got a PhD or something. So it's like SMBC. And I feel like it's like, you deserve that. You deserve that for what you're going through as an SMBC. You deserve to have this, like, the qualification and the title.
I think motherhood in general is sort of an education and learning. So absolutely, it's like an accreditation, a certification that we earn over time.
Oh my God, completely. We were just talking before we pressed record. We were just comparing notes of our babies' sicknesses going to nursery and the back to back, and how everything is just, we didn't tell you this before. And I agree, we should have training and certification for what to do when you become a mum. But maybe we'll talk about that a little bit more in the episode when we dive into to your story and hear more about it. But I actually wanted to start today with a different question, and I would love you to share as we go on, you know, what are we going to talk about, what led you to making this decision and how that process looked for you from making the decision to practically speaking, but also emotionally speaking, and how your life looks now. But before that, I want to ask, you're in your 40s now. And I'm pretty sure that your 30s were full of life learnings and lessons that led you to the point of deciding to become a solo parent. And what do you wish that you knew then that you know now?
Oh, it's a good question. So I think if I could go back to the version of me in my 30s, this has just popped into my head. One of my mentors used to say to me, sometimes you have to slow down in order to speed up. And I was so focused in those 30s on, I've got to have the baby, I've got to have the relationship, I've got to do the thing, that I was speeding through life and not really taking anything else in. I was so preoccupied with all of what I didn't have. I wasn't really seeing what I did have. And I think if I could tell that version of me just to calm down, relax, and it's going to work out, might not work out in the way that you expect it to, but that's okay. You were saying just then about the course that you're teaching. I think I was so focused on it rolling out exactly in the way that I guess is sold to us, is marketed to us. And if it's meant for you, it won't miss you. And I know that's a cliche, and yeah, it's so true. If it's truly meant for you, it will happen. And the other thing I was going to say about that question, to be honest, my first internal reaction was actually like, maybe I don't want to know any of it, because I really wouldn't want to do anything differently, no matter how challenging those past relationships was. I wouldn't want it to be any different to where I've ended up right now, which I think the 30-year-old version of me would be like, oh my God, what do you mean? You're a single mom. Like, why would you want to end up there? But I think having that knowledge then might not have served me well now, because I had to go through all of that to be the person that I am now. I had to experience it.
I just got goosebumps, because that's such an important point of, you don't always have to know how the future's going to turn out, but a topic that we've been talking a lot about in my community, and also one of the last podcast episodes that I released was this talking about this need to know the future and feeling like you want to look into the crystal ball and see how it's all going to turn out. And the fact that you made this big decision and you're living an alternative path to an alternative version of life that you probably ever anticipated, but you still can look back and say, no, it was actually all meant to be that way. And if I could turn back time, I wouldn't tell myself what I know now. I think it's testament to the fact that the decisions that you made were so accurate for you, but also really inspirational to anybody listening who's contemplating or thinking about making a decision to be a solo parent.
Yeah, I think if you're in a space where, don't get me wrong, there were times when I felt really desperate. I was that person that was trying to look into that crystal ball and predict my future. But it's the one thing we would love to have control over it, but we don't. We try so hard to control our future, right? And yet all that energy and all that effort we put into controlling the outcome, which we can't predict as much as we would like. I think the lesson I learned through everything that I went through is the only thing I can deal with is how I respond to my circumstance in the present moment and my experience of my circumstance in that present moment. And I just wish, rather than trying to predict my future and spend all that time worrying about what might happen, if I'd just been with myself in what was at that time. And I know this is a message that you strongly talk about as well, is and cultivated the best possible experience for my life in that moment. Then that path might have been a little bit smooth, but to the point I just said, maybe in my eyes, everything that happens to you is there for a reason, to teach you something. And I'm always learning. It's not over. I don't believe that we're ever healed. It's an ongoing journey. But totally. For me, my journey, I needed all those things. I had to experience those things. And I think once we kind of understand, maybe this is necessary for me, whatever hurt, whatever difficulty I'm going through is actually necessary. And then it's just, where's the opportunity here? Where's the lesson? Where's the opportunity, so that I can kind of grow and potentially not have that lesson repeat itself again.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Yeah, I think what you're saying is something that is really, I guess, more easy in hindsight, the beauty of hindsight. And I've been thinking a lot about it, creating this workshop and working with my clients inside the membership at the moment, thinking about, you only have a certain amount of energy. So if you imagine it's like marbles, and it's like if those marbles are completely taken up with the fear, with the lack of acceptance, with the grief, with all of the things that we feel, which we do feel when life doesn't go the way that we expected it to, there's only a very small amount of marbles left over to actually enjoy life. And if you look at them all in front of you, like you get to choose like where to put your energy, then put it in the good stuff. And it's not to say that the other stuff doesn't exist, because I also think we shouldn't bypass all the negative parts, but where do you actually focus? You know, where are you actually putting your attention? Because the more attention that you put to something, the more that thing is going to become the biggest thing in your life. And like you said, taking away from the present experience. So yes, wow. Love that we started with that question, because I feel like already 10 minutes of pearls of wisdom before we've even got started. Let's go back into your 30s and hear more your journey, and talking a little bit more about what led you to becoming an SMBC.
My journey as such was that I got married when I was 30 and I was divorced by 32. So my marriage lasted a total of 18 months. I had been with them for 8 years prior to that, but 18 months. And at 32, the bottom fell out of my world, because that future, that crystal ball, that prediction of how my life was going to be, I was on that trajectory of what is seen in society as the perfect life, right? You meet the partner, then you buy the house, you have the child, off you get your white picket fence, etc. And that was the vision I'd had for myself from a young age. And all of a sudden that wasn't there. And I went into complete despair in my early 30s. And how that manifested actually was, it's funny that you mentioned bypassing, because I put it in a box, I ignored it. I did all the classic bypassing tactics, you know, serial data, trying to kind of fill that hole with another relationship, worrying about the 35, you know, I've only got until 35 to have my child. I've got 3 years left. I need to meet someone, make a baby. And so what essentially, I was quite an anxious, I will just say as well, a lot of this stems from sort of who I was when I was younger as well, but I was quite an anxious person when I was younger, and I suffered a huge burnout. I had a breakdown a few years after my divorce, to the point having panic attacks, everything, and to the point where it was a really strong wake-up call for me in terms of, okay, I need to look at me, my life, my thoughts, everything that's kind of led to this burnout. And it wasn't a smooth journey, to be totally honest with you. It's not like, oh, I went to therapy and then it was fixed. I went to therapy. I thought I was fixed, because that's what everyone says, right? You go to therapy and it's like, because back then I say fixed on purpose, because I genuinely thought I was like this broken thing that somehow I'd go see someone and they'd put all my pieces back together and then I'd be fine. But it wasn't like that. I got into the next relationship and similar mistakes appeared, and the cycle kept on prevailing until that moment where I was like, okay, let's just keep looking at this. You know, the healing process is like, okay, I'm here again. So why am I here? Let's look at this again. And essentially, long story short, I had a long period of being single. I got into a relationship between 37 and 40. But the person I was in a relationship with wasn't sure if they wanted children. And I think the most important lesson I could take from that is, if someone tells you something at the start of the relationship, believe them. Don't hope that will change. And I think at 37, I was so concerned that I was running out of time to have a child. I overlooked it. Beyond my better judgment, I didn't listen to that. But he did tell me at the start of the relationship. And so that relationship ended when I was 40. I think I held on too long. Well, 39, sorry. I think I held on a bit too long through that desperation of I'm running out of time. And bear in mind as well, I was a coach through all of this. Coaches have these challenges. We're not perfect beings that don't make, I don't want to say mistakes, but don't make difficult, choices that have an impact and are challenging and difficult for us. And that relationship ended because having a child was the most important thing to me and catapulted me into, okay, I'm about to turn 40. The baby is more important than the partnership right now to me. And it was a process of thinking about it for a long time. It didn't come out of nowhere. I spent 2 years before I made the decision. to be a solo parent. But yeah, it was kind of this flow of going through relationships, realizing that, okay, I've got a bit of work to do on myself. And I was doing a lot of work during that relationship, after that relationship, and discovering a lot about myself. And I was in such an amazing place when that relationship ended, and was really happy and content in my life. And that's when this decision became sort of a no-brainer. It became easy for me.
Yeah, and I want to ask about the decision. When you were growing up, or even when you were in your 20s and your early 30s, was it always very clear to you that you wanted to be a mother, or was it something that you debated about before? And I want to ask that because there is like a stereotype of if you're going to become a single mum by choice, and you're going to go down that path, then it's because it's like been your lifelong dream. And actually, I have a lot of conversations with women who are in the process of making this decision, or who already have done it, and it was never a lifelong dream. It was in the same way for me when I became a mum. It was something that I always expected I would do and thought I wanted, but I never yearned for it. I'm not like the most maternal person ever, and I don't particularly love being around other people's children. And no offense to anyone, but kids, they're not like the be all and end all of my journey. It was, for me, it was never like, oh my god. But still, I froze my eggs, and still, if I was in your position, I also probably would make the decision and do this at the age of 40. Like, it was something that was very much present in my 30s of thinking about. So I think it's really interesting because I think people from the outside might look and say, and probably you get asked this a lot, did you always know that you would do this? Or did you always think that it was your priority? And I'm curious to know for you how that looked.
I'm very similar to you in the sense that I don't think I was ever a particularly maternal person. And same as you, other people's children, again, no offense to other people's children, but no thanks. Like, I'm not really interested in people's babies, other people's children. In fact, my worst nightmare, I'm still dealing with this now, because now I have to go to children's playgrounds and be surrounded by large volumes of children. That's still my worst nightmare. I don't like to be surrounded by hordes of kids. So no, I'm not. I was never the most naturally, more to your point, I think it was something I thought I would do, but it wasn't when I was young. And I think one of the reasons, for example, why I didn't explore egg freezing in my 30s while I was single as well, is because I think there was actually a point where I wasn't that bothered, or I wasn't that focused on having a child. For me, it was kind of that switch going beyond 35, and then that feeling of my time is running out, which now I realize is, I'm going to caveat this and say, there are a lot of people that have fertility issues, and this is not for everyone, but also 35 is not the cutoff point. It's not. I'm walking proof of that. However, I think that was the switch. It's like almost when the possibility of something might be taken away from you, then you truly understand how much that means to you. And it became more and more this internal yearning for a child that I didn't realize I had until I got to that point in my life. But I would say by the time I was, 40, it was all I wanted for myself. I remember saying to friends and family, and maybe this is an extreme statement, but I said, I won't, unless I try, I have to try to have a child, because at least I know I've tried. And if it doesn't work for me, then I will accept that. But I had this feeling like I wouldn't feel fulfilled without a child, which was not the case when I was younger.
How were people's reactions and responses to when you decided to go for it and make the decision? And I'm asking that because we were just speaking at the start of the episode about the societal order of things, the timelines, the societal pressure. And how did that look when you started to actually share this want and the fact that you were going ahead?
Yeah, I think I mentioned as well, this was the thought process for me. It was a 2-year process, really. So I think when I initially said it, maybe as well because a relationship had ended, I think potentially the first thought that my parents had were like, well, this is a knee-jerk reaction to what has happened in that relationship. And I think for them as well, like their generation, IVF wasn't really a thing for my parents' generation, never mind a woman electing to have a child completely by herself. via utilizing IVF or IUI. And so I think at first they were shocked. Well, my parents are quite good at like keeping it to themselves, letting me go through the motions. And I think in those initial stages, it was a process for me. So I remember going to one appointment and having kind of like the initial fertility checks and having those conversations. And that was really triggering for me. Being in a doctor's office by myself in a clinic, having those conversations, that's when the grief hit me a little bit of, I'm not doing this with a partner. I am doing this alone. What does this mean? And so my parents sort of saw all those phases as well. But I think as it was a 2-year decision-making process, I think over time they saw how serious I was, how much I thought it through, everything that I was doing to prepare myself for having a child. And I mean that emotionally, financially, all of those things. And I think through seeing how I was handling it, then friends, family, etc., they all then had confidence in me that this was the right decision. I will just add as well, I have a solo parent. One of my best friends was a solo parent. So I also had that person in my life that I could go to who'd done it. And so they were fully championing me as well and being like, you can absolutely do this. So that helped me a lot as well.
Wow. And I think that's really powerful to say that if this is something that you're thinking of doing, speaking directly to my audience now, like to make sure to consult with somebody who's done it and to have that person as a mentor, as whether it's a coach or a mentor or just a friend, someone that you know, or even if it's a friend of a friend, I'm so sure you probably feel the same of being that person to support another woman going through it. I think it's really important. And I know I don't want to compare me freezing my eggs with what you are doing, but I really resonate with that feeling of I was sitting when I froze my eggs doing the IVF process in like the doctor's lounge. And I remember actually when I did it, I actually started the process of egg freezing. I think it was like the second week, but you're really pumped full of hormones. You know, it's like when they add the second hormone in, and it's like you feel like absolute death. And going to have my eggs monitored and my blood tests and everything, and just like being the only one alone in the IVF clinic. And it was, I think it was September the 1st. It was, my procedure was on like September the 9th. And just, it was opening my phone and looking at all the back to school photos and everyone being like, first day of nursery or first day of school for my kid. And I'm like sitting in this IVF clinic looking around and everyone's holding their husband's hand. And don't get me wrong, I'm not taking it away from anybody who goes through anything. You know, it's still extremely difficult whether you're partnered or not, but there's something very confronting about being there alone. And I remember like, my voice had a bit of a wobble then of the feeling of the emotion, going back to the emotion. But really, like, I feel like it was very much like I remember looking at my Instagram and just being like, oh, this feels awful. Like I'm so confronted, like I'm doing this alone. How different it would feel if I just had somebody just to hold my hand and say, babe, it's going to be okay. So I just think people listening will want to ask that more deep question of how did you deal with those moments, and how do you deal with those moments when you go through hard, challenging times, and when you are confronted with those thoughts of, you know, I'm alone, or this, you know, I'm not doing this in the same way that other people, I don't have the same support. How do you cope with that?
I suppose I'm lucky in the sense that I'm also a trained coach. I have some tools in my tool belt in the sense that I have a strong understanding, without sounding too cliche, right? But nervous system regulation, it is a thing. It is an amazing tool. And I think, again, it goes back a little bit to what I said earlier. I think I needed to go through all my challenges previously to maybe learn to have a higher level of resilience, I guess, that in those moments when you are confronted with those huge feelings. And look, I am human, hey? I have sat, I have cried, I have been terrified by this process. I think it can come across on my Instagram like, you know, I just breeze through it all. No. And I held myself through it. And I'm really lucky. I have a really supportive family. You know, my parents have been my strength when I felt like I've not had that there. And I did have those role models around me. And do you know, another thing is it was me sharing online. I don't know whether you know this, but in terms of when I initially shared about my journey, I went viral. And all of a sudden, this feeling of, I knew one person in my life that had done this, which great that I had one, but I really had this feeling of, no one really does this. And I think a lot of women that do egg freezing, a lot of women that go through this process, they feel like they're very much on their own. They're really isolated. By sharing that post, I had an army, a legion of solo mums just come forwards that were sharing with me. I also had trolling, unbelievable trolling, but take the negativity away. And what I managed to do was create my own support network. The positive sides of social media, right? I had this beautiful, and still do, community of solo moms that were there by my side through the process. Some of us being pregnant all at the same time. Some of us who are kind of raising our children online and sharing tips. And so my learning a little bit was there's a lot of women doing this, which is a topic in its own right? But there are a lot of women out there doing this. And I think maybe part of it is that a lot of women don't talk about it. And whether that's because they feel there's a stigma attached to it, there's a stigma to being a solo parent, so to speak. Yeah, but the moment I started speaking about it publicly, just all these other women came together. And so in a way, they gave me a lot of strength. I've had real moments of feeling quite isolated, those late nights when your baby's crying in the wee hours, and especially in the newborn phase. And, I had moments of sitting there going, in my head, what have I done? What have I done? I will admit that. And it's like anything. I think it's just taking a pause, taking a breath, sitting with yourself, and saying, firstly, you saying to yourself, you've got this, you can do this. Like, one of the things I always say to my client is, think of any other challenge you've ever been through where you thought you weren't going to survive it, where you thought you weren't going to make it, and yet you're sitting in front of me, you're here. And so that's the pep talk I give myself. Like, you've got through everything else, you can get through this. And if that pep talk doesn't work, then it's like, either reach out to a friend or even, like I said, this online network, and just speak to someone that's either been there or understands your situation, that can just reassure you that it's going to be okay.
Have so many different responses. I have so many things to unpack from what you just said, and like different directions. My mind's going all over the place, because firstly, I want to say yes about the community. Yes. I can honestly say that my journey in life, the last however many years, has been so supported by women who are in the same position. I remember going through this huge big breakup on my 33rd birthday and feeling like, exactly like you said, the despair and the panic. I would not have got through that the same if I didn't have the army of women who are supporting and validating and lifting me up. So yes, community is everything. This is why I started the Turning membership. For those of you who aren't in the membership, get inside the membership, because this is exactly it. You need it. Like, if you're considering becoming a single mum by choice, then yes, go and find your community. Go to Emma's page, go and find your people who are doing the same, because there is nothing, we can use ChatGPT and we can ask Google a million questions, and we can read all the right books, and we can watch all the right YouTube videos, but there's nothing that's going to be the same as having a community and having people. No. And I can even say that firstly from my single days, and I can say it secondly from being a mum, because we had me and my friends created friends that I made because of becoming a mum, an amazing group of women. Because I was an expat, we all connected, we were all from all over the world, and these mums have become my people I speak to day in, day out, all hours of the day. It's like a 24/7 community. Shout out to any of them that are listening to this. They literally saved my postpartum time. But yes, I just think that firstly, that's so incredibly important, is to have that. So that's the first speech that I wanted to reply. And secondly, I want to say something that's maybe a bit taboo. And I'm sure you've heard this a lot. And I'm also sure it really helps you a lot in the dark moments. And I'm really glad that we're having this conversation after I've become a mum, because I had no idea about this before. And I really want to say it, because I have had another SMBC on the podcast before, an amazing woman, Ebony. We think it was 3 years ago now that I had her on, and we had an amazing conversation. But my perspective was very different, because now I'm a mum. I can truly say that two things go on with me when I think about you and your journey from my experience. I'm now 15 months postpartum. And I can say that I've had so many moments where I have thought, oh my actual God, I cannot imagine doing this by myself. So much kudos to every single mum, because this is so fucking hard. And, the fact that you have somebody there like cheering you on is like or not even cheering you on, but just you can pass the baby to them, right? Then there are other times, and I have to say as well, my husband, he is a wonderful dad and he's an amazing human being. And really, he's one of the better dads out there. And I can really say that from knowing about my mum friends and from family and everything. But there are many a time when I have thought to myself, if I was doing this alone, it would be easier. Really. And it's like those two things sit side by side, because also the anger that you feel towards your partner, the rage, and also the feeling of like being misunderstood, or the feeling of them not stepping up. And this will happen to all women in relationships. And I want to say as well, I guess a third point to throw in is that doing it with the wrong person and doing it with somebody who isn't supporting you, now I'm doing it 100% better to do it alone. Really. And I'm saying this from experience, as in not experience of doing it alone, but experience of seeing or imagining other people having a partner that doesn't show up or doesn't or stays asleep all the nights, or it's better to do it alone and not have that anger. It's almost like a jigsaw piece that, like, I imagine it like in Jenga, and it's like an extra piece that causes the tower to fall over. And there have been nights and times in my postpartum journey when Ellie has been away for whatever reason, for work, or he goes away every so often for a couple of nights, and it feels easier. And I say to my mum friends, doesn't it feel easier sometimes when it's just you? And we're all in agreement that, because you don't have somebody else's emotions to manage. You just have yourself. So those two points of view, those perceptions really sit side by side, because I don't want to undermine you. And, again, to repeat, there's so many times when I've thought, oh my God, like I've never been more proud to know women who do this by themselves. And at the same time to be like, doing it with the wrong person for sure is worse than doing it by yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe going off in a slightly different direction, but I always wonder how many people are rushing their relationship. It's that comment I made before. How many people are steamrolling ahead because they're so worried? I did it. So worried about that timeline running out, that they're in a relationship that maybe isn't the right container to bring up a child, but the desperation to have the child keeps the relationship going, which nearly happened to me. And then to your point, the challenges that arise out of that, raising a child with someone that potentially isn't in alignment with the way that you would like to raise a child. And I've definitely, obviously, I don't have an experience of what it's like to raise a child with a partner. However, I can see the moments when, I don't want to use the word selfish because that's not the word I want to use, but I get to give all of me to my son. And that's great because I don't have, like you said, I'm not worrying about someone else. The flip side of that is there is no one taking care of me. And I don't want to say that my parents, they do the best that they can. I relocated to England so I could be close to them. So I had that support. But I was thinking about this. One of the things I've realized in this new role of motherhood is I don't quite know who I am. That's okay. But I don't know who I am because I'm not who I was previously. That person is no more. She's gone. And I also don't know who I am now. And nurturing me is very last on my list because I'm trying to do juggling so many other things. And I think the benefit of the right partner is not you having to ask, but the right partner looking at you and thinking, she needs a break for an hour, or she needs, and then just saying, I've got the baby, I've got you, go do something for you. And I think those moments when there's been dark moments, hard moments, I wish there was that person that I didn't have to ask, that came up and just said, I've got you. And I think one of the surprises, and this is no shade on my friends, I love my friends, but you know how it is, the support network tends to wait to be asked. There's very few people that go, I'm just going to do this for that person because I think that's what they need. They wait. And so as a solo parent, it can feel very isolating because in the dark moments, you really feel like you're in it on your own. And yet you almost don't have the ability to ask someone for what you need because you don't know what you need because you're too busy focusing on the needs of your child.
100%. And I relate to that in terms of just being a mum in general and not knowing how to ask for what you want to ask. And even my partner, like genuinely, like I really suffered postpartum, had postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, and I didn't know how to even ask him. It's like being in a bubble. So I can imagine the thought of having to only rely on even your mum and dad, even like, really close friends, that takes that even to the next level of having to really be able to make requests. And it's something that as women, we're really socially conditioned not to do that. And I always think back to pre being a mum. And it's actually one of my regrets with my friends that were mums before I was, which most of my friends became mums before, or a majority of my like original home friends. And I wish I would have been there more. You know, I wish exactly like you're saying, is that there's something. And for anyone listening, you know, and don't get me wrong, when you're single, there's also the same feeling that you want your mum friends to reach out to you and you want your friends, and we've both been through that, right? That feeling of like, even when you're alone and you don't have a child to take care of, wanting it. But yes, like reaching out to your friends who are mums, especially friends who are doing this journey alone, is crucial. And not, I see like a lot of reels about it saying like, not asking like, what do you want? What can I do? Especially in those like first weeks after birth, but just showing up with food and putting it on the doorstep and saying, you don't even have to open the door, but I've just baked something for you. I've just made you something, or sending over like a takeaway, or all of these things. And I guess maybe people listening to this, maybe will enact some change, but you don't really know anything about that before. So saying it with complete compassion and grace, because no one knows really like what it is to go through it. And you know what it is to go through what you go through. But yeah, like I definitely think about that a lot. I think about how could I have been a better friend? And now how can I be a better friend?
Yeah. I had exactly the same thoughts with my friends, like thinking, oh, I showed up with them. And then once I became a mother myself, thinking, I could have done more. I should have, would have, could have, but I could have done more. Absolutely.
Yeah. I think it's something that is like a life lesson, and you're not supposed to know before. And that's like, maybe you had that as well. When I was definitely going through all of the pregnancy and birth and postpartum, I had a lot of thoughts of, why did no one tell me? You know, why did nobody tell me how hard this is, or even the physical aspect of it? So I feel like maybe there's something like protective in biology, that women don't tell women the truth about motherhood and having babies, because it's like otherwise no one would do it. And I don't want anyone listening to this to take that the wrong way. And I wanted to ask about something that you brought up, which is finances, because I actually asked my turning members, what did you want to ask you? Because I mentioned that I was having this interview, and a couple of them replied saying they would love to know how you financially prepared, or how you financially cope with this, and what things and factors to take into account, which is funny because it's such a big, important question, but something that I didn't have on my original list of questions. So yeah, if you have any points or tips about that, I would love to hear.
Sure. So I will just say, one of the things when I was looking at preparing myself for IVF and going through the journey of IVF. So I'm a big proponent of, I guess, like the energetic side of putting yourself in that situation. And so when I was looking at kind of advice around fertility in later years, there was one particular person. So I'll mention them. She's called Dr. Cleopatra. She has an Instagram as well. But one of the things she talked about is one of the biggest factors, again, I'm not a doctor, however, one of the influencing factors in the process of IVF is stress. It's financially quite terrifying. It's emotionally quite terrifying, and becoming a parent as well, and all those things. And so one of the things I did was, at the beginning of the process, was like, what are the things I'm most scared of? What are the things about this process that are my biggest concerns, that are causing me the most stress? And one of those is, how am I going to afford it? How am I going to pay for it? And all those things that you outline, start creating ways around that. Look at that challenge. What can you do to make that situation more comfortable for you, so that you remove some of that stress going into the process? Because IVF or IUI, or just fertility journey in general, is a process that requires a lot of resilience, a lot of grace, a lot of nurturing the self, that you need to remove all those other factors away as best you can, so that they're not also impacting your feelings. So I will say, was lucky, prior to becoming a coach, I had a good corporate job. However, I wasn't in, I would say, a financial situation now at the beginning of my thought process where I felt I was fully comfortable. And so I started putting money on one side. And I would say, finance, and I'm fortunate, I started my coaching business, And I will just caveat this as well. I now do that on the side because becoming a lot of people used to ask me, how the hell are you self-employed and you have a baby? I made the decision not to be anymore for me, because for me, I couldn't cope with not having that regular, just that paycheck, knowing it was coming in. I tried it and it was a step too far for me. I have enough things to juggle with being a solo parent that I made the decision that my business needs to take a sideline. So it's there. I've removed some of the more, let's say, time intensive activities out of it. And where I can, I do it in my spare time. So it's additional income. So I have, if you like, my coaching business is my side hustle, as we call it nowadays. And I have a full-time job. And does it make it any easier? No. Having a full-time job and being mum is you're a solopreneur and you're a mum. It's a lot. Even people in relationship are juggling all these roles. But yeah, financially for me, it made me feel more secure to have that regular paycheck. But I think for the people in your membership is have a good look at your financial situation now. I think bringing a child into this world, I sound like a mum now, I was going to say, but get rid of the debt. Get rid of whatever is causing you to feel anxious, that's causing you stress, that's causing you worry. Work it down. And don't tell yourself, but I've got no time to work it down, because that's going to take, you will find a way. There's always a way. And it might mean that you're going to need to make compromises in your life. But if you're going to be a parent, you're going to make more compromises than you ever thought you would about your life. And I don't mean that to scare people, but I don't want to say your world becomes your child. It certainly does in my case, being a solo parent, but you make decisions for your child at that point. And so I think another really nice point is put yourself, and someone said to me, start cultivating the energy of a mother already. So what would the mother do in you? And the mother in me would be like, right, I need to be responsible now. I need to stop spending money in these areas of my life where it's nice, but I need to get myself more stable here, because that's what the mother energy would want me to do. That's the role that I wanted. And so I started to bring that into every element of my life. And I think I've shared this on a few podcasts before, is I believe that your child chooses you way before they come into they come into our world, to earth. And so I always told myself, my child is watching me. My child is watching me. And if they were watching me right now, how would I want them to see me handling this situation? What's the sort of parent I already want to show them that I am now? Not when they arrive, but what I am now. Because if they're watching and they see I'm preparing and I'm getting ready and I'm creating a secure base for them, then I'm showing them that I can do this, that I'm ready, that I'm here to receive you. And I whether you believe in that stuff or not, even if you just take it for yourself, psychologically thinking I've done everything I can so that child, if they're watching me, is like, they're ready now. And I think that energy, getting yourself prepared, it puts you in a much calmer, we talk about that receiving energy. You're in that receiving energy then, because you're basically saying, I've got this. I figured it. I've done this. I'm making the hard choices already. I am the parent already.
I absolutely love what you've just said. I think it's just relevant for any woman in their 30s who wants to become a mother to have this receiving energy. And I couldn't agree more about the baby watching and choosing. I also felt it. I felt like I was going to have a baby long before I was actually in a position where I said I'm ready. And I just knew that there was a baby waiting to come down, come up, come down, come from where we don't know. But anyway, exactly. But yeah, I really love what you said, because I think that, exactly like you said about compromising, that if you're, let's say, a woman, you're in your like early to mid 30s and you're thinking potentially of going down this route, and you can't even get your head around the fact of putting money to aside each month because it feels too big, then there's something in that. And I'm not saying that means, okay, don't do it. It just means why? And to really dig down and ask those questions, because to go on a journey like you have to do the inner work, because there's going to be, as we've spoken about, the challenges and the resistance and the public opinions and the times where you're like, oh my God, what am I doing? And yes, if you're not emotionally prepared for that, and practically speaking, like you said, even putting money aside, then it's going to be a lot more more challenging.
Yeah.
Can I ask, how was the IVF process for you in terms of the physical? I'm not actually 100% sure about your journey. Did it happen first time, second time? What was your experience? And you were 41 when you were doing IVF. How was that? And I think these are important conversations to have because of the stigma of you can't get pregnant after 35, which we all know is absolutely not true.
Bullshit, yeah.
Bullshit, yeah. I was just going to say bullshit, and I don't know why I said not true.
Swear.
No, I don't know why. I was literally, bullshit was coming out of my mouth, and then I went really quietly, absolutely not true. Don't know why.
Yeah, thanks for asking. I think, so I always tread carefully with this because I know that it's quite a challenging topic with women for those that have fertility issues. So I like to lead and say I was really fortunate. And I did so much in that run up to having that process. And I firmly believe that a lot of the mental, physical preparation around you, all of that really plays into it. But essentially, I did get pregnant first time with my own eggs. IVF for me, I've shared quite a lot as well in my own sort of community that I did a lot of meditation work. So really meditating, envisaging myself as a mother. And I did that wholeheartedly every day to the point where I walked into the clinic and I said, I'm getting pregnant today. And I remember the nurse being like, well, don't get your hopes up. And I said, no, it's happening. I said, it's happening. And until it doesn't happen, it's happening. Because I never wanted to allow, it's what you're talking about with where you want to put your energy, where you want to focus. When you go into IVF, you can spend so much time going, what if it doesn't work? What if it doesn't happen? What if I don't have enough money to try this again? All I did was channel all my energy into it's happening. And so for me, I think because I'd gone through the period of grieving and everything and had this sort of long run up period of 2 years of prep, I was really pumped for IVF. Like I was really excited, which a lot of people, that's not normally their experience. They normally feel with a bit of dread and worried. I was so excited, just really happy. It was like, get this baby in me. I'm ready to be a mom. And then, so that's as I got there. So actually my injections and everything, pretty intimidating doing them by yourself. I think you being single, you would have done them at home, but you sort of get given all these meds and you're like, I was on YouTube looking at videos. I did it live on Instagram, as you do. What am I doing? Did I have I put it in the right place? And I just think I was so excited. It was like every injection was just getting me closer to being a mum. So for me, I didn't find the actual medication part too traumatic. It was really smooth for me from starting to inject to going to the clinic. I think it was only 8 days. And then I was in the clinic. Where it took a turn for me was, not to go too much into the detail of IVF, but basically when they retrieved my eggs, they did not retrieve as many as I would have hoped. So they only retrieved 3. And there was this sudden moment of, I remember my resolve of this is happening. It wavered. It wavered for a good couple of hours where I was like, it might not happen. And then I was like, stop. You need one good egg. And I was like, that's all I need to focus on. I remember going back. I had my treatment in Denmark. I went back to the Airbnb. My mum was there for support. And I'm like, I'm meditating. And I sat down and I was like, it's just one. And I focused. And I remember they called me 2 or 3 days later and they said, 2 have made it. They're both super healthy. And I was like, okay, no, just one. And my little boy arrived so I think, again, for those that are maybe going through IVF, don't focus on the numbers too much. Focus on getting yourself in good health and focus on producing good quality eggs, because there's all this thing about 35, it's where the quantity goes down. Great, but we can do a lot. Not great, sorry, but you know what I mean. Yes, that's biology.
Yes,
and yeah, we can do so much for quality. Focus on that part, because IVF is an industry. It's a business, and they make a lot of money from this process. And I hate to be cynical, but it's true. They will sell you a lot of tests. They will put you in. And my process, I kept really simple. I kept it as natural as I could, while obviously having a medically supported process. And I think that helped me because there was less invasion. I mean, My story got a little bit complicated later. There was a moment where they told me I might have to terminate my pregnancy, but he's 100% healthy and we're all good. Yeah. So the journey was not smooth throughout. Pregnancy was not smooth. But yeah, for anyone thinking of doing it, get excited about it, because people spend so long thinking, what if it doesn't work? Yeah, but what if that's the last time you ever have to do that process? What if that is the beginning of you meeting your child? And if you can go in with that energy and be like, oh my God, I could be pregnant now. I am pregnant now. You know, it makes the process so much lighter. And yes, then you might not get the news that you want, but then you can deal with that when it happens rather than in the moment. Yeah, I was blessed with the process as far as I could be. And yeah, to anyone who's a little bit more mature, it was my own eggs. I was 41 years old. I've got my little boy and I have another embryo for a sibling if I decide to go ahead with that or not.
Is that something that you are considering?
Right now, no, because my son is 11 months and I'm definitely fully in that postpartum phase. And I think I have shared that it's potentially maybe something I would consider in partnership, not by myself. So I think if it was something that my partner wanted, but just in case I change my mind, I've kept that embryo because I don't know. And maybe when I get older, I might think that I want a sibling for Leo. But for me, he's enough. I'm really happy with one. And we'll just see. We'll see what happens in the future.
People have just started to ask me another one, because now Lenny's 15 months and it's like that time, you know, and also because of my age, people are like, oh, you're going to be 40 soon, you know, birthday's coming up. And I'm like, my answer is literally exactly, apart from the bit about the partner, but just what you said. I'm still postpartum. One is more than enough for now, you know, that feeling of like so grateful to have one healthy baby and just knowing that if there's a future version of me who will want another baby, like we said before, we'll feel it. We'll feel the baby ready to come. And I truly believe that. And I'm just like not holding on to this societal timeline that just because you have one and then 1 year passes that you're going to have to bring a sibling into the world. I love your story so much. I have about 10 more questions that I want to ask you, but I know I can't keep that much more of your time. But you did just, I'm going to ask one more if it's okay, a few more minutes. You just, said about potentially in future partnership. And I think that's a question that a lot of people have about women who make this decision is, do you feel like partnership is soon to be something that you are interested in or no? And yeah, I'd just love to hear a little bit about how that looks like in terms of your journey at the moment.
Yeah, I think there's no desire to seek a relationship. I'm open to one. I'm not actively looking for anything. I think probably, you know, my son is always going to come first. So the person that comes into my life actually is going to need to understand that. And as and when they come into my life, I feel like in the past I was looking for the relationship. I was trying to find it. I now have the belief it will find me. And in the meantime, I'm super content by myself, raising my son. I don't feel that anything is missing. And I really want to say that I don't. I'm really, really content with my situation. But I'm also not opposed to it. This isn't me. I think a lot of people see my situation as, you know, a bold feminist movement where I'm saying, fuck you to all men and I don't need you. I'm raising a boy. I never want my son to grow up thinking he's not needed in this world, ever. And I think a lot of the rhetoric we hear out there at the moment around men is, we don't need them. We can do all this by ourselves. I don't want my son absorbing that message at all. That's not what he's going to hear from me. So I think, you know, there's absolutely a place in my life for someone when it is time, whenever that might be, for that to arrive. I'm only 40. I mean, I think people classify 40 as old. I'm not even I hope, but I'm not even halfway through my life, I hope. You know, I've got a lifetime to still meet someone. You know, when marriage was first conceived, a lifetime was what? 20 years, 25 years? I've got 2 lifetimes ahead of me if I want to meet someone else, you know? So I think, and I'm not nervous about having a conversation about the situation I'm in either. You know, I would be very open and honest about being a parent and how he came to be.
It's such a beautiful response. And I also think that, again, like we're living in 2025. Like, I think that, again, this this mindset of the timeline has to be done in order is just not true. People get married, have kids, break up, remarry, with kids, without kids, blended families. Life just looks different now. And there's also something else that I want to say. And I know that it's a bit of a strange conversation because we're both new mums in exactly the same period of life, but with such different, I have a partner and you've done it alone. So I can never know your experience at all. And in the same way that you can't know mine. But I had this moment last night where I was just putting Lenny to bed. And, when you have relationships, and for me, in the same as you, many relationships that failed and things that almost happened in my 20s, 30s, up until my partner now. But I was looking at Lenny last night and I knew that we had our conversation today. And I just thought, the love that you feel for your baby is just nothing comparable to a romantic love. It's really hard to explain that as well to someone who's never had a baby before. And I never knew about it before I became a mum. But I looked at him and just had this rush of overwhelming love. And I just thought, I can really understand. And it's not because I don't love my husband. I really love him. But it's just different. It's just different. So now I'm interviewing you at this stage of life and you say you're completely content and you can be with your son and know that it's enough. I can understand. I can feel that. I feel like it's just very, very different to romantic love. And it does almost fill a void that you couldn't understand that was even there before. I don't know if I'm making sense, but I'd love to hear what you think of that.
Absolutely. I mean, unfortunately, it's something men can never experience. They love their child. They do, but they can't experience it on the level of it. They are literally part of us. We grew them within us and we house that child and we birth that child into this world. And I just think the mother-child bond is insane. And that's nothing against the non-birth partner, right? Nothing. They can have a beautiful bond as well, but there's something very intrinsic about the connection between the birth mother and the child. And as you were talking then about partner, I had this conversation with a friend recently because I think my experience, this is not what I tell myself a relationship will be now, but I think my experience of my previous relationships was they took energy from me. And right now, I have a certain amount of energy. I need energy from my job and I need energy from my child. And if I've got any left, it's probably going to be for me. And so who I allocate my time to, I have to choose really, really carefully. And so that partner, future partner, they need to bring ease to my life. They need to ease my load because I am carrying a huge, all parents carry a huge load, even in your relationship. And what you're looking for, I'm sure, is your partner to, both of you, to ease that load between the two of you. And I think it's, for me, a lot of people, when I went through this and I had a lot of comments on Instagram, they used to say, why don't you just find a man? Find a man. In fact, I had some really comments like, you don't look that bad. I'm sure you could get a man. And I'm like, well, and it's just, it's not about finding someone. I am genuinely complete and content exactly as I am, which in some ways means I'm more selective. I'm much more selective, especially since having my son, because whoever's going to be in his life and influence him and be the male role model to him. I mean, not only am I looking through the lens of what I would like, but I'm looking through the lens of how is this person going to influence my child? But yeah, in terms of the unconditional love you have for your baby, I've never, ever experienced anything. And even on my most difficult days, and I think we talked a lot about the hardship as well. And I just want to say, motherhood is equally it is duality on every level. It is the most challenging thing I have ever done. And yet I have never felt more joy, love in my life. I haven't. And he just needs to give me a look and a smile, and nothing else in the world matters. And now I feel a bit emotional, but
yeah, no, I'm also crying.
But it's true, isn't it? Like your baby they can trigger you like that, but they can also just melt you in seconds. And I think, earlier you were saying, what would I have liked to know? And I think we live in an age where we only like to show the good of a situation. And I think anyone that's either thinking about motherhood or going into motherhood or in the early stages, it's absolutely okay to have the heavier feelings sit alongside the lighter feelings. And I think we try and ignore these, or we think these are incorrect. Like, I've never felt more helpless in my life, and yet I've never felt more resilient, right next to each other. I've never felt more strong, and I've never felt more weak. I've never felt more secure, well-rounded, and at the same time feeling like I have no idea what I'm doing, and my world is going to fall apart. And it's okay. It's totally okay that those two things are happening side by side. And I think a lot of women worry when I had quite a lot of women in the early, especially through the morning sickness phase, when you're in morning sickness. For me, it was awful, but I only had it, thankfully, for about 3 months. But I remember thinking, if I can't handle feeling like this, how am I going to handle being a parent? And I felt utter despair. I was like, I can't do this. And I felt ashamed of those feelings. I was like, oh my God, so many women would kill to be in my position. And now I'm thinking I can't do it. It's okay to feel that way. You're allowed to feel despair. You're allowed to feel like maybe I can't do this. Hold yourself in it. It will likely pass. And, eventually you will experience all the other sides of it as well. And the good outweighs the bad, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree as well. I agree. I had a really tough time, but exactly, like, it is worth it for those glances and those laughs and the smiles and all of the things. And yeah, I just really love what you just said about the duality of the emotions sitting side by side. And I think that's a perfect lesson to end on, whether you're a mother, whether you're single and struggling, whichever stage you're at in your journey, those emotions are going to be there. And there's no shame to experience the whole spectrum, because that's being human, isn't it? It's just, this is life. Thank you so much, Emma. I strongly recommend to my community, and I know there's so many of you in my audience, or my listeners, that are considering taking this path, to go and check out Emma's Instagram, her content. I just love the way that you speak about this topic, and I truly think it's just such an important conversation. Where can my listeners find out more about you?
To be honest, I have a website, but to be honest, I do everything pretty much through Instagram. So yeah, you can find me there. And yeah, as a consequence of this situation, I now consult and mentor people on this subject. So yeah, look me up if this is something you're considering.
Amazing. Such important work. And thank you so much for coming on. Sorry, I took so much more of your time. I have like 10 more questions, but we'll save it for another time.
I could talk forever, but thank you so much. It's been really lovely to be part of this.
Perfect. Thank you. And I'll see everybody on the podcast next week.